Hey everybody, welcome back to Backlog Banter. I'm your boy Abram, and as usual by Tucker Hazelden. We're here to do it finally. We're here to review the hot game of the summer, Kirby's Dream Buffet. And I gotta say it. I think this game is awesome, but Tucker, we played it a little bit together. I've seen your thoughts in the Discord, but I don't really know what you think of this game. So from 40,000 feet, as though you're high up in the air, Tucker, what do you think of Kirby's Dream Buffet?
Kirby's Dream Buffet, very high quality game, very
Yes.
unique game. Finally, a Kirby spin-off in the modern generation that's not a rip-off of something. Oh, that's not retreading one of the
Right.
mini games from the older games. I'm on board for everything this game does
Yeah.
conceptually. And frankly, in execution, I think a lot of it is great. But I think here's where I really come down on it.
Sure.
I think what's here is good, but I think it's also a missed opportunity not to make it something bigger. And because of that, I find the game kind of disappointing and underwhelming. But then I come back to the fact that no, what is here is quality. So
Yeah.
it's a balancing act for me, but on the whole, I think this should have been something larger, and I think it deserved to be something larger. But I also respect that it's something small. So
Yeah.
I'm of two minds here.
Yeah, I mean it's complicated, right?
You're seeing the man with two brains? That's me right now in this review.
Wow. And I got zero, so it counterbalances. Here's what I think about this game, Tucker. Cost $14.99,
Yes.
and that's just a fact of life, right? And I think that inherently has to shape our discussion because
Yes,
ultimately,
absolutely.
what is the game if not a Kirby downloadable digital spinoff? And
Yes.
ultimately, here's what I think about the game, right? You're right. Is there a ton to do? No. But also, did I expect a ton to do when I paid for the game? No.
No.
What I think is great about Kirby's Dream Buffet, and what I hope it kind of signals in a way, is scope for Nintendo's first and second party teams
Yeah.
to experiment with small digital titles again.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because ultimately, I don't necessarily think I thought this at first, but in hindsight, I don't think I would have wanted Hal to take a year and make a $39.99 Kirby's Dream Buffet game, right?
Sure.
Ultimately, I think what's fun about it is that it's a really cute idea packaged in this nice little title that has a fairly robust progression, a great sense of variety, really fun moment-to-moment gameplay, and that's kind of it. And I didn't really need
Yeah.
anything more than that because I came into it knowing this is a digital game. This
Yes.
is a spin-off title. There's a bar set for those. And I think that if anything, I would want Nintendo to experiment here more.
Sure.
Because instead of brushing out a huge game that ends up being underwhelming multiplayer title, scale back a little bit. It's very clear that Hal said, "Hey, we've got our main product, Kirby in the Forgotten Land, and it's
Yes.
fantastic.
Yeah. Great
But
game.
then let's fuck
Watch a
around.
review.
Yeah, then let's fuck around a little bit and make Dream Buffet." And
Yeah.
I think that synergy is really nice, and I hope more teams explore that.
Yeah. It's the. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the cheapest Nintendo published game of this generation. I think we've had quite a few. $29.99 has a couple $40 ones, and of course plenty $60 ones. But I think this might be the cheapest Nintendo game of like the last 5 years.
As we say on this channel, gun to the head, gun to the balls. I'm pretty sure Box Boy Switch game was cheaper.
Box Boy Box Girl. You might be right. Also, it might be same price, $15. But
It's
regardless,
cheap. That's the bottom
it's
line.
cheap.
It's
And not
cheap.
only is it cheap, it's rare that Nintendo makes a game this cheap. And I think comparing it to the other downloadable titles that we've even gotten from HAL ever, I think this is probably the best one. Certainly the one I think has the most value in terms of I enjoy it the most, but also in terms of its quality and the visuals and conceptually it being something entirely unique. And from those angles, I absolutely do think that this is an impressive game. I think that I do disagree with you a little bit on there being a variety. I think the variety is part of what I do feel is lacking here. And also in that progression, I'm a little bit iffy on. But let's just talk about the visuals, because I think that's the thing that's most surprising about this game. I never expected it to have poor gameplay or a progression system of some kind. But in terms of visual quality, that's where this game is leaps and bounds above. Not what I expected, because we didn't expect this game to exist, and when we saw it, it was with the reveal trailer. But from the get-go, I think this game is absolutely gorgeous. I think it's probably the best Kirby aesthetic we've ever gotten, or at least my favorite. And maybe I like Epic Yarn or something a little bit better, but it's very soft, it's very colorful, and it gives everything like a nice semi-realistic texture that I think makes it feel more coherent than some of the other Kirby art styles, which just pull in a bunch of stuff.
Right.
This is a very straightforward and clean and beautiful art style.
Yeah, I think this game is. I was stunned when I started playing it and realized how beautiful it is. I really do think that it is one of the most beautiful games on Switch, frankly,
Sure.
because in terms of its fidelity, it's quite impressive. The texture work is really nice. I love when you're like rolling through frosting and you're leaving a little trail behind,
Yes, that looks
uh,
great.
or as you're going up the honey, right? There's a lot of really nice small details that I think are refreshing when we play a lot of Switch games that are pushing so far
Sure.
technically that they start to even fall off a cliff a little bit. I even think about Forgotten Land, beautiful
Mm,
game, but when you're watching enemies at like 2 frames
yeah.
a second in the background, right? There's none of that here. And of course, it comes back to this being a game of small scale.
Yeah.
Everything is so polished because there's not a whole hell of a lot of it.
Hmm.
But I think that visual charm is great. And to your point of sort of the art direction, I
Hmm.
love that too. I think it's a really fun thematic idea of what does Kirby love? He loves food.
He loves
Let's make
eating.
a let's make a game solely predicated on food. And frankly,
Yeah.
I'm surprised that this hasn't been a motif we've seen
Yeah.
more of before.
No, absolutely. I
It's
mean, it's
yeah,
surprising that there's not more food-based Kirby
right,
stages.
yeah,
And especially basing a whole game around it, I think is a great idea. And I'd like to
yeah,
see this explored in other avenues, more platforming Kirby games, maybe another 3D platforming Kirby game. But I think
yeah,
it is that food aesthetic that takes it to the next level. Because I think Cal makes great looking games, but I
yeah.
think them focusing in on the food aesthetic and getting each food element, whether it's a stage element or the strawberries themselves, to look as good as they can is what heightens the fact that this game looks so good. And you're
Yeah.
visiting all these levels that have different food themes, and I think it really sets itself apart from other Kirby ideas.
There's if for people who remember the Sweet Sweet Galaxy and Super Mario Galaxy, there's sort of a similar feel I get here, not only obviously in terms of the theme, but in terms of the sense of like these aren't just environments that are then like pasted over with food textures or whatever, you
Yeah,
know what I mean? Like I think about the cutout cookies Mario jumped across in Galaxy, the holes in the cookies becoming the platforming obstacles. There's a really great sense of like, yeah, you're on fucking burgers and cakes and ice creams or whatever, but there's still a sense of like galaxy-esque place. It's
sure.
completely ridiculous, but you know you're going over bacon bridges and you're sliding. The physics are
Yeah.
different on the popsicles and things. Like
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, there's a real sense of deliberate level design here
Yeah.
that I think is just is quite delectable.
It's
I
delicious.
that's my new catchphrase.
It's
But
gonna say
yeah,
at the end of every backlog banter video.
it looks great. It also sounds great because there
Sure.
is a
Yeah.
fucking acre of Kirby music in this game.
Hmm.
Some remixes pull some of these I don't think are remixes. I'm pretty sure some of these are just pulled right back. But nonetheless, the breadth of soundtrack is impressive. I really just think that the presentation on the whole is
Yeah.
really great.
It's
Even
top notch.
the UI elements, like when you're beginning the gourmet race, it's like what's on the menu for today. I
Yeah.
like those UI elements. I also just like the menus, the sort of quote unquote hub area rolling up to the
Hmm.
menus and it pulls up the screen.
Yeah.
I think it's simple and elegant and it's a cut above when
Yeah.
I think about like those awful menus in Mario Golf or whatever, right? A
Sure.
menu with personality does a whole hell of a lot for a gameplay experience, I think. So
Yeah.
presentation, I think this game's fucking money.
Yeah. No, it's interesting that you bring up the elegance of this,
Yeah,
and it is part of why the simplicity of this game works. But I think it also works to highlight that this game doesn't have
sure.
much. Period. I mean, it's
Yeah,
$15 game as we've said. It's very focused on what it does. But when you go to the menu and you've got three options, you've got play by yourself, you've got play online, or LAN play.
yeah,
And LAN play is basically the same as online play, but it's in person. But then playing by yourself, you can't do four-player split screen on one system. You can only do two-player split screen on one system, and then when you enter any of these, you have just a handful. It makes it look like there's a bunch of options, but
yeah,
in reality, there's play Grand Prix, which is the game, or play bits of the game,
yes,
or do free roll, which is just like a map that you can roll around on, which is fine, but largely kind of useless.
yeah,
It's not like you need to practice this game, and because of that, I found myself running into the fact that I felt that I was seeing the same things over and over again. It didn't have much new to experience pretty quickly. And I
sure.
started off playing this game single player. Of course, it's a lot more fun when you're playing with actual people, when you have a little bit of sense of competition or camaraderie going on. But I do feel like even that doesn't really salvage the fact that not only is there not a ton to do in terms of there's a good amount of stages, but there's a crazy amount of stages.
Yeah,
And there's not a lot of variety in how you're approaching these games. It's Grand Prix or bits of Grand Prix. And each element of that, I think, has some things I can knock against it, which makes me like, this is a little bit shaky.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I mean, going into it, what I didn't realize is that the structure of the game is thus that it's race, minigame, race, free for all.
Yeah,
It's
Battle
basic,
Royale.
yeah, it's basically sort of an interpolation of the City Trial or Smash Run formula that
Hmm.
Hal was chipping away at back on GameCube and brought to here. And I think about the fact that City Trial has very few boards. I think about Smash Run having like one mode. What becomes the replayability factor in those titles, and I think it translates here, is the fact that it is super fucking fast and
Yeah,
really wacky when you're playing with people,
yeah.
right? I mean, yeah, the game loses a lot of its charm when you're just playing by yourself.
Hmm.
But I think a lot of multiplayer games lose their charm when you're playing
Yeah,
when you're playing by yourself, right?
yeah.
But when I'm doing this, and yes, there are you run through the boards pretty quickly. You do unlock new
Yeah.
ones for the mini games in particular at a nice
Hmm.
clip, and I like that. I
Well,
found the Wispy Woods one, and
yeah.
there's cute things like that. But ultimately, I'm racing for a minute, 90 seconds.
Hmm.
The first mini game is a minute or less. Race again.
Sometimes they're 20 seconds long.
Yeah. Race again, battle, and I'm in and out in like in like a 5 minute chunk, right?
Yeah.
And so ultimately that's what I mean when I said there's a sense of variety, because there's constant momentum, right? I'm
Sure.
always moving. I think about like Halo Infinite, for instance. When I'm playing Halo and it's CTF and I'm on this map for 10 minutes,
Hmm.
right? And I'm basically playing the same maps I've played since December.
Yeah.
There's a much greater degree of okay, malaise,
Yeah.
same thing.
I know where to go.
But
I've seen
yeah,
this before.
but not only is this not a game that marketed itself as being live service, new things coming all the time,
True.
it's a fraction of the price of these other titles. So when I'm
Yeah.
in and out and jumping between rounds and running it back against Jean because we've been playing like every night, that's what I mean when there's sort of a sense of variety and freshness, because I'm not being bogged down. It's not a Mario Kart thing if I'm doing 3 laps around this
Yeah.
and then a battle mode length mini game and then three
Hmm.
more laps battle mode length mini game. And
Yeah.
and that it's that speed that I think keeps the game quite fresh.
Yeah, that the structure of the game in the
Yeah,
Grand Prix is not my issue at all. I think
sure.
that the idea of interspersing minigames with races and having that all contribute to a larger thing is a great idea. The balancing of that sometimes feels a little bit weird because that last battle royale can ostensibly, and plus the bonuses, can just make the whole first 3/4 of the game not matter at all
Right.
in terms of progression, which is, hit or miss. That's the Mario Kart factor of trying to balance things out by introducing wacky, or Mario Party, I guess, is the
Yes.
more apt comparison. But I do think that the fact that the menus highlight the lack of
Yeah.
variety in the content is something I want to drill in on a little more, because it's even as simple as something like when you select race, I feel like you should be able to select which courses you want to
Sure.
go on and see how many courses there are. Or when you select a minigame, change the parameters a little bit. Okay, I want 5 bots versus 4 bots, or change like you can change the power level of the bots,
Yeah.
which doesn't really matter. They're not very good even on the highest difficulty, at least in my experience. Or change how frequently items spawn, or change some things like that to make it feel like you have a little more control over
Yeah.
how you are approaching the variety of the game. Something that makes Smash so special and Mario Kart so special is you can really customize how you want your game to feel.
Sure.
And even if it is the same stages and same characters that are rotating, there you can change things up through custom rules to make it not feel as though you're going through the same thing again. And that is not present at all in this game. And that makes me wonder, like, why? Because that's not particularly hard to implement, I would imagine, at least compared to making new stages and balancing things. And yeah, so that just, it feels like very obvious that that's missing to me. Like, I was searching for it. It's like, oh no, it's not there at all.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair, but I also think that if you're making a game of this scale, why why bother? Because at
Mm.
least on my end, I think, well, sort of the fun of it is I don't know what's coming next. I'm not going to burn myself out on the same course because I'm choosing it over and over again.
Yeah.
The game picking it for me, again, it's that sort of randomness of Smash Run. I never knew what the final challenge was going to be in Smash Run. Same in City Trial or whatever. And I think what kept those game modes fun is the fact that at a certain point, God's taking the wheel, and He's going to tell
Yeah.
you what you're going to play.
Mhm.
Now, would the option have been good? Yes, I think the option would have been great, but that option I don't think makes sense when they're this number of things to pick from.
Yeah,
And it comes,
that's true.
yeah,
I mean, this is a game that is, as we said, limited
right,
in scope. There's probably 6 or 7 main race maps,
yeah,
something like that. And there's probably a good 20 or so mini game maps. But and I feel that I've been unlocking them. Every 30 minutes or an hour or so, you'll get a new mini game board. But I do think that maybe my problem with that, which is sort of combined with the fact we don't have these options, is that I don't know if each of these elements on their own is strong enough for me to like really want to dig into them and continue playing them past that fun of random, see the few boards, play with my friends. That's kind of it. I think that those mini games are they're all the same. Is
sure.
berries drop? Go get the
Get
berries.
them. There's different
And,
ways to get them, but you got to get them.
yeah, or no, well, there's not different ways to get them. There's different ways to spawn them,
Sure,
and you have to get them. And I think
that's a
that
good
feels
distinction.
really limited in terms of
Yeah,
what this game could have been. And when people see this trailer, they're like, "Oh, it's Kirby Fall Guys." You're thinking Fall Guys has all this crazy breadth of
sure.
ways that they implement just funny guys hopping around, but different levels, different pacing, different things. You're either doing a race or a 20-30 second mini game of strawberries falling, and I think that the mini games, which of course are very quick, admittedly, aren't great. I think those
Yeah,
are easily the weakest part of the game, and unfortunately, that's where the most of the variety comes from. I don't even know if you can unlock more like full-on race courses, but I think the mini games are actually pretty weak, especially considering the variety that could have been there.
yeah. No, I mean, it all just comes down to could have, should have, X and Y and Z.
Yeah.
Again, I just don't think it. This is a really good idea,
Yes.
but if this game, let's just do a thought experiment for a second. Let's say the game was $59.99.
Hmm.
Let's say that Forgotten Land came out 18 months from now. They're working on this idea for how, who knows how long, reuse that engine X and Y, get it off the ground, and all of a
Hmm.
sudden, holiday 2023, one of the big titles is this big Kirby gourmet race game, whatever, right?
Yeah.
That's fun, but where's Forgotten Land 2? Why aren't we making
Yeah.
progress on that, right? Again, it just comes down to me, yeah, the game could have been different, but what I like more than the idea of this being a bigger game is that next year there's gonna be another game of this scope that is
Hmm.
completely different.
Yeah,
You
and I
know?
think that's possible,
Sure.
but we don't know if that's true or
Right.
not. Considering it was such a long time between Star Allies and Forgotten Land, and there was maybe 2 spin-off games in there of differing sizes and different concepts, but of course those were less unique. They were less
Yeah.
creative. I think that this is a good signifier, and I certainly hope that there's something
Yeah.
of this creative and production value coming out next year. But I also think that if I would rather each game be super substantial on its own. I would like this game to be in my rotation of
Sure.
multiplayer games. But as it stands, I feel like it is so lacking in breadth of content and does feel so repetitive at the end of the day that I don't that it yes, it's $15, but I don't necessarily think that's a great justification for it being a good game, but not something super special. When frankly, the potential is there, and
Sure.
I think that that's really why I'm being so critical on this game. I've enjoyed what I've played of it. I
Yeah.
do think it's a surprisingly quality game, but it could have been so much more, and I know Hal is capable of giving us so much more.
Yeah. No, no, I think that's fair. What I just think, and I'm not trying to suggest that now that this game came out, it means we're getting one of these every year. But it
Yeah,
means saying that I don't want them to get bogged down in making these spin-offs much bigger than this.
sure.
If they want to say, hey, we're making another Air Ride-esque game again, and we're putting all our eggs in this basket,
Yeah.
then sure, whatever. But there was such a great idea in the 3DS era of Kirby spin-offs of, hey, what if to supplement the mainline games you got these 7.99 titles? But the
Hmm.
problem with them were that they were just sub games
Yeah.
made a little bit bigger. This isn't.
No.
There was the nut of the idea in those puzzle box things from Forgotten Land, but they really said, what can, just as
Kirby's a ball.
right, but like what I'm saying is there is no clear, here's the thing from the
Yeah.
main game, we
Yeah,
ripped
of
it and put it
course.
here.
Which I'm so thankful for.
Yeah. And so if this is the sort of the cadence of Kirby content, then that's
Sure.
great to me. Give
Yeah.
me something that's going to keep me engaged here and there. A couple great nights of fun for $15 makes a lot of
Mhm.
sense to me.
Yeah.
Keep the Kirby sort of stable of games growing in a way that is not just here's Kirby Clash clusterfuck again for
Yeah.
free with gem apples, whatever the hell they're doing. Really polished, small, curated experience.
Yeah.
And because of that, that to me just sets my expectations, I think, differently than yours. But I will also say, well, this is a game that John and I have played every night, and I don't necessarily anticipate stopping. And I think about it in a way similar to the fun you've gotten out of 1-2 Switch.
Hmm.
You can see everything in 1-2 Switch,
Yeah.
and the amount of time you can see it in this game, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And this whether they're substantive to you is going to come down to whether or not aesthetics really matter to you in a game like this. But
Yeah.
the dopamine of basically getting a new unlockable after every match
Hmm.
keeps the sense of progression that a game like 1-2 Switch doesn't have. But
Yes.
what I mean to say
It's
there
very
is
true.
that 1-2 Switch, I think, similar to this, is a testament to the fact that breadth of content doesn't necessarily mean that a lack of breadth of content doesn't mean that a game can't be fun
Sure.
repeatedly.
Yeah.
It when you craft an experience this strong and this replayable, jumping in for a 5 minute round
Hmm.
becomes 3 5 minute rounds and then four, and then it goes away. But then you come back to it the way
Yeah.
that you cycle between these other games. And I am totally with you that there's a world where this game is bigger and there's more to do,
Yeah.
and it's a revelation and it's a new staple Nintendo title.
Hmm.
But I don't think there's a bad world where we're setting the precedent that Kirby experiments with
Yeah.
small games that keep you busy for a little bit of time and you jump out of. Not every
Yeah.
multiplayer game has to be a live service. There's basically no content in Mario Tennis on N64, and that game is still fun as fuck today.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I come down on it.
Yeah. The final thing I want to talk about, and I think that this is maybe what led me to first start having problems with the lack of content, is that
Sure.
there's ostensibly no single player version of this game.
Right.
You can play the game against bots, but that's just less fun than
Yeah.
playing it against other people. And I do think that there is a easy way that has been done with plenty of these spin-off Kirby games, plenty of these smaller Nintendo titles where there is a campaign and it's Kirby got shrunk down and then there's a cutscene at the end and
Yeah.
you're rolling through each of the things and very simple overworld map or something like that that contextualizes it and feels like there's something substantial to do and work your way through, even if you're not interested in playing it
Sure.
with
Sure.
other people or online, which is of course where the meat of the game is, especially because you get an experience multiplier when you play online, which you only get partially when you play by yourself,
Yeah.
which is a really strange balancing choice. But I really do think that there could have been a 2 to 3 hour campaign, use the same stages,
Yeah.
use that same opening cutscene, and that would have really helped for me to feel like there was just some more meat on this bones, especially because,
Yeah.
3 options on the menu and they're basically all the same option is a little bit telling when there's not that campaign to cycle it around.
Yeah, I mean, I would have loved a single player campaign. I just think about like Kirby Fighters 2,
Mhm.
which tried to be pretty good in scope. You had a single player
Yeah,
arcade ladder and then multiplayer, but neither halves of that whole felt particularly strong.
yeah,
And it just what I just think about is like, again, this is a game of a defined budget.
yeah.
I'm sure it didn't cost very much, and I'm sure it couldn't have cost more than it did, or it wouldn't have been made.
Hmm.
And I think that at a certain point, talking about this game just involves recognizing that this is the scope of the experience.
Yeah,
I think about when I criticize a game like Nintendo Switch Sports, where is the content, where is the progression, where is X
yeah,
and where and Y, where is Z? Well, you charge me full price for that game.
yeah.
And if Nintendo is finally going to say we're going to set price according to scale, then I think
Godspeed.
yeah,
Let's
and
fucking home.
then I have a lot less criticism to make
Yeah,
inherently, because Dream Buffet never sold itself to me as anything other than fun, small scale, replayable multiplayer.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
they honed in on it, they polished it, they gave me things to unlock, looks and sounds nice,
yeah.
having a ton of fun with my girlfriend. To me, it accomplished what it was trying to do because it set that expectation accordingly.
Sure,
I would be
absolutely.
far more on your side again if even if this game was $29.99 or
Yeah,
whatever. But it just comes down to scale.
yeah. And this is the lowest scale scope game that we've seen from Nintendo
Yep.
in a long time, and I frankly think that's refreshing. I still think
Yeah.
this is a good game. I absolutely recommend it for the low price that it is.
Right.
And who knows if I keep playing this game, I think it could be one that grows on me over time as I slowly start to unfortunately shift towards your side of the coin. But as it stands, I'm glad I got it. I'm certainly not disappointed in my purchase, and I think this is just another interesting part of Nintendo's year, which I think is very interesting
Yeah.
on the whole. And I would love for one or two games of this scope and caliber and quality, especially, but to have this 1 month random release cycle. Why not? I think
Yeah.
that's probably my favorite part about this game is that one day I was like, "Hey, new Kirby game," and you woke me up and you're like, "Hey, new Kirby game," and now, hey, we're already playing it just a month later.
Yeah, that's what they need to do more of. That's what the eShops are there for. It's
Yes.
what WiiWare was there for, DSiWare, 3DS eShop, Wii eShop. And what this really is what I've been begging for. And we've talked about this before. You have a storefront for small scale experimental titles. Let's make
Yes.
more of them. Backlog Banter is awarding Kirby's Dream Buffet a 1 out of 10.